Oh,
How dare you?
little terrible towel here, dude.
Dude, that's not a terrible towel, dude.
Little,
How
little
how
tiger,
dare you, dude? Manly
tiger terrible
tire.
towel, dude.
Get out of here. All right.
Terrible tiger towel.
Thursday. Thursday slate, Dawson.
It's a big day for college football. It's the beginning, even though it started last week.
Even though we just skipped over week 0.
We just skipped over it
We just
because we decided we wanted to go to a Yankee game instead.
That's not
But
why
you know
we.
what?
I don't know if that's why we skipped it. We could have.
We probably could have done
We
it, but
could
we
have
didn't.
recorded during the week.
But instead, we
But
wanted to go watch the Yankees get hammered by the Colorado Rockies. Not in Colorado, so
that's what we
it doesn't
do.
make you feel very good.
That's what we do.
But in lieu of that, we looked at Thursday night football, and the first game that caught my attention was UNC Minnesota, little Big Ten ACC intercollegiate matchup. So we
Yeah.
look at UNC, and we remember that Drake May and all that jazz has departed. Drake May and Devontae Walker both not on the team anymore. Two All ACC players. One of them was the number 2 pick in the draft, but I digress. So yeah, UNC is going to have to replace their QB, and it's either going to be Connor Harrell or Max Johnson, the LSU transfer. Connor Harrell played in the bowl game against West Virginia and did not do too well. West Virginia walloped UNC, but that's neither here nor there either. UNC is 119th in returning production out of 134 teams too, which kind of concerns me a little bit. 4 of the 5 starters are needs to be replaced on defense. Um, on the defense side of the ball, though, they replace I think only 4, so they have 7 coming back on defense, which was I think 74th in the country. So it's gonna be a lot of new faces for UNC, but you know, with a team, the team led by Mike Brown and whatnot, I assume that Mac Brown's going to get the team, turned around and whatnot. UNC returns Amari Hampton, um, preseason All American at 1,500 yards rushing last year. Is he going to have an offensive line to run behind? I don't know yet, but I mean, with a guy that good, he's going to figure it out, I think. Minnesota returns the 21st most players, I think, in the country, 21 out of 134. They returned 71% of the total starters. Um, Out of the 3 or 4 that they don't return on defense, though, they're all in the secondary, which isn't good. Tyler Nubin got drafted by the Giants. And then they also lost transfer corner Trevion Jones, who was kind of a big part of their secondary. So they're going to have to replace that, too.
Quarterback returning too.
No, QB. If I can find it here in my notes.
Going
No, it's
forward.
going to be graduate transfer Mike Brosner from the University of New Hampshire. Actually, he led the FCS in yards, touchdowns, and QBR. However, this isn't the FCS anymore.
No.
Um, I mean, can he produce against an experienced North Carolina defense? I don't really know. I mean, you're not playing, albeit Montana's a very good, FCS program. You're not playing Montana for like a semifinal in the FCS championship. You're playing, a Power Five football team. So I'm gonna go with UNC -2. I mean, it's
Are
a
you
really short line,
on the
only
road?
because on the road in Minnesota, yeah. I mean, this Minnesota team returns. I mean, almost their entire defense too. But I mean, their secondary is very, 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 very inexperienced. So I mean, albeit UNC loses Devontae Walker, who was an all ACC wide receiver. Um, they do return 5 out of their 6 leading pass catchers from last year, so they do have experience on that side of the ball.
Your scouting report would lead me to believe that Minnesota is gonna probably take this game at home.
Yeah, I mean it's at home, but
FCS quarterback or not? I mean, it's not like he definitely want to be the first guy come.
he wouldn't.
come.
But I mean, it makes me think of Trey Lance in a sense, where
But
you no matter how good you are at the FCS level, and I understand that the NFL is a much larger jump than the FBS level, but I mean, Trey Lance was also, you know, the FCS champion quarterback, where we're looking at a guy who couldn't get out of the semifinals in the FCS. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, I just don't think that a guy can get put into an offense like that who, I mean, they didn't really throw the football all that well last year. They only totaled about 2,400 passing yards on the season.
Yeah. All right. Well,
It's not great.
You got an over under? No, no, he doesn't.
I don't have an over under, no.
Is that how we're doing this? Are we doing over unders? We're running on the fly.
Yeah, we're kind of running on the fly here. No, I just took all spreads.
All right, we'll just do spreads.
I took a couple. I took a couple over unders, but
all right. Well, I had Minnesota +2, and I had the under.
Well, it's gonna come down to the quarterback position.
I don't know. There's a lot of inexperience there. Over there.
It's gonna come down. Well, Max Johnson. I mean, he did do pretty well at LSU. He's no Jaden Daniels, but
no. Going to Minnesota. Give me Minnesota.
All right, whatever.
Whatever. We'll move on. Next up, we got Coastal at Jack State. Jack State given 3 points. Dawson.
Big group of 5 matchup.
Yeah, Dawson, give us
huge group of 5 matchup. Yeah, I got you. Jacksonville State finished 8-4 last year. They beat Louisiana in the New Orleans Bowl. Their head coach is infamously Rich Rodriguez, who is a former West Virginia head coach and gave me one of the most heartbreaking losses of my life when I was 6 years old. 2007, Pittsburgh. Don't want to talk about it. But I digress. He's been around the block he's been at West Virginia, he went to Arizona, he went to Michigan, so he's been all over the place at the collegiate level, and then he ended up at Jacksonville State, and he's turning this program into a pretty respectable program. However, they are in need of replacing their QB from last year, and they need to replace their second leading rusher, which was also their QB. So, I mean, they run the spread option.
Yeah.
Down in Jacksonville, so it's a lot of, they're spread out, but I mean, they're running the ball. So, I mean, they had, last year they had 4 rushers of over 450 yards, 2 rushers of over 700 yards. They had 3 rushers that averaged over 5 yards a carry, but they do lose one of them in their starting QB. Their QB this year is going to be Logan Smothers. He's a Nebraska transfer, I think because of Dylan Raiola. I'm not too sure about that. But he had about 1,100 yards last year in Nebraska. Not too bad. So I think they're just going to honestly just pound the ball. It seems like Rich Rod just wants to run. I think he knows what he's got. He's not going to really throw the ball. Coastal Carolina is replacing a lot on defense, and they're also going out there with a QB that's only played 4 career games, albeit he did win his bowl game last year against San Jose State. He had pretty efficient, 200 yards. He also ran the ball 18 times, so, I mean, he's going to be, just running as much as I think Jacksonville State is too. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but I have Jacksonville State -2.5.
That's what you're going with? We're bitter opposite so far. I got Coastal +3.
I think Coastal is a more popular team when it comes to group of 5 teams over the last 5 or 10 years. Yeah. And I think that's mainly because of Grayson McCall. That big game against the Holy War.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different look down there, but
against the Mormons, it's gonna be different. I mean, they finished off 7-5 last year, but they do lose Grayson McCall, who played 8 or 9 games for them last year, who's now at NC State. NC State's now ranked, looking to do something this year.
I still went Coastal +3, and the over, ton of points.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
Split twice.
Next up, we got North Dakota State at Colorado. At Coach.
This is probably the most. I'd say the most interesting.
Getting 10 points.
This is probably the most interesting game I'd say on Thursday.
Yeah.
Only because I think North Dakota State has this reputation, at least over the last 20 years of our lifetime, of, getting these week 1 games, circa Iowa, when Iowa was ranked, I think, in 2017 or 2018, and North Dakota State went into Kinnick Stadium and beat them. They're a perennial FCS champion. Like when you think of the FCS, you think of North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana. That's really it.
That's
You're
that's
not really
about it.
you're not really thinking of anybody else when it like Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, yada yada. Exactly. However, they are losing their head coach. They just hired Tim Polasek. He's the head coach. He was the QB coach at Wyoming for the last 3 years. And this North Dakota State team isn't as strong as these undefeated teams that they had with Wentz and Trey Lance. I mean, they went 11-4 last year total. They lost in the semifinals to Montana. They returned 9 of their, all Mountain Valley Football Conference players, but I mean, we're talking about all Americans at the FCS level. And as much as, I honestly do not like Colorado, especially because it's their first year in the Big 12 and they didn't play all that great last year in a pretty weak Pac-12. Deion Sanders is the head coach of the team. His son, Shador, is one of the most pure passers in college right now, as much as I hate to say it too.
27-3 touchdown interception ratio.
27-3, yeah. I mean, he took about 55 sacks.
Yeah, I was going to say with an awful offensive line. Only throw 3.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much negative you can really say there.
Was that might be perfect time?
Yeah, exactly.
Travis Hunter is going to be a top 10 pick. Playing on both sides of the ball. He's probably their best player, on both sides of the ball, no matter what. They did lose. Say it again.
I'd say most versatile player in the game, Travis Hunter.
I think the most versatile player since like Charles Woodson, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. He was really big last year for them.
Yeah, he was a very weird, because he only had about 450 to 500 rushing yards last year on the ground, but he was such a big weapon out of the backfield that he still totaled around 1,000 scrimmage yards without putting up running back numbers per se. But you do have to replace that. Jimmy Horn Jr. is back. He's probably going to be their wide receiver 1, coming back with 567 yards, 6 touchdowns. They have a transfer from Vanderbilt, Will Shepard, who had a pretty mild role at Vanderbilt, but he has an option. He's listed as their wide receiver on their depth chart, so he's going to be playing. He had 700 yards and 8 touchdowns in the SEC last year, so he's probably going to contribute immediately to a Big 12 offense, especially with Shedeur throwing the ball. I think in this case that as much as I wanted to take North Dakota State for the lore of it, and as much as I wanted to take North Dakota State because I hate Deion, I can't do it at 10 points, and I think they're just going to roll over them, unfortunately. So I'm doing Colorado minus 10.
Yeah, 10's a very small number for...
Small number for an offense that put up about 50 points a game last year.
Playing an FCS school. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. And, I mean, I will say, Colorado did go 4-8 last year, but if we look at... If you look at their record against...
schedule too.
They have one possession losses against about 4 ranked teams.
Yeah.
The only big blunders they had were Washington State, week 11, they lost 52-16, and that Oregon game, but Oregon was a perennial top 5 team all season.
And they blew that one lead to Stanford last year.
Stanford. I'm excited to talk about Stanford later on here. I think we're going to talk about them in the Friday game.
All right, well,
or one of the Friday games. Yeah.
I have Colorado as well, obviously, so there's first.
I just think I mean the fairy tale is not here for this one.
Yeah, I think the line should be 17.5 at least. Anyways.
I was gonna say around 20-ish.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Thursday. Let's move on. We're obviously not taking every fucking game here. Couldn't realize that yet.
Yeah, we're not going to be, giving you an insight on the Central Connecticut State University versus Central Michigan football game. only because there are so many games that we, as even hardcore college football fans and the college football fan, watch in general. So we're not going to waste people's time.
Yeah.
Or our time, for that matter.
Exactly. As much as we love our Central Connecticut Blue Devils.
Yeah, go Blue Devils, baby.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Friday then. First game on the Friday slate. Got FAU going to Michigan State. Michigan State giving 13.5. Give us
this one's weird. This one's weird because the way that I think about FAU, at least for the last 5 years, last 5 or 10 years, I'd say, was Lane Kiffin, only because of what he did there. But I didn't realize how deep in the dirt they've been over the last 3 or 4 years. They're coming off a 4-8 season, 4 straight losses. Over half their team is basically gone. On their depth chart, their 2 starting receivers are both transfers that are transferring this year. E.J. Horton from West Virginia, who played minimal time at West Virginia last year. He only had about 8 or 9 catches last year. And then Mylan Tucker from Appalachian State, who had a little bit larger of a role, but still not that much, only about 17 to 20 catches last year. And then they also have a transfer QB, Cam Fancher from Marshall, who started all 12 games but had a pretty pedestrian 2,100 passing yards. So, I mean, you're only looking at about 190 passing yards a game from an offense that in the past, with, you think of Chad Pennington throwing 400 yards a game, you think of, that traditional group of 5 Marshall look when they, in the early 2000s at least, they were playing pretty good offensive football at least. It's just not there right now. I mean, they're starting running back. George Johnson III is a transfer wide receiver from UMass that's getting tried out at running back. What, 400 receiving yards last year for UMass? So, I mean, you look at a pretty below average Conference USA. Is UMass in the Conference USA?
UMass is independent.
Well, they're independent still?
Yeah.
Shit. But playing, these Conference USA and these low-tier Northeastern teams and not playing all that well, only garnering 400 yards, not all that great. And the thing is that they started the year pretty well last year. They went 4-4, and then they just rattled off 4 straight losses to make it look that much worse. So it just seems like a whole lot of instability on that side when you look at Florida Atlantic. And, I mean, there's still not much. It's not much better on Michigan State's side either. I mean, they have a transfer QB, Aiden Childs, who was a 4-star from Oregon State, who he's only thrown about 35 total passes in his collegiate career. He's only completed 24 of them. The most throws he's had in the game last year was 8 throws. He went 5 for 8 against Stanford for 75 yards. However, he did tell me this. He told me to bet the over on their wins. Their wins is at 4.5. 4.5 wins over under for Michigan State. I don't know. I think this game's going to be kind of the deciding factor in that. Because if they can beat FAU and convincingly, I think people will take Michigan State a little bit more seriously. I mean, Michigan State over the last couple of years, it's literally been like Rocky Lombardi, Peyton Thorne. Not a lot of identity at the quarterback position. And, I mean, this guy kind of gives him a little bit of identity. He's athletic. He can move. He can run the ground.
I always liked Rocky.
Rocky Lombardi was, I think we liked Rocky Lombardi because his last name was Lombardi, but
no, dude, he slings the rock. He's an old school guy.
Yeah, 1975, handing the ball off 50 times and throwing the ball 10 times a game, probably, maybe. Whatever. Besides the point. So, and we look at the receivers. Monterey Foster leads a fairly unproven wide receiver group at Michigan State, 576 yards, 3 touchdowns as a redshirt sophomore. This Michigan State offense only had 14 total passing touchdowns last year. That's not good for a Big Ten team that was in the playoff at one point when you think about it.
Yeah.
They got dog walked by Alabama still. But, I mean, that's crazy that a team that has made the playoff is in is in this low of a position right now.
When you think of Michigan State, you also don't think of bad football. So like it's
You don't at
I don't
all.
think
You really
so.
don't. I mean, it also doesn't help when your head coach gets fired for like sexual misconduct,
Yeah, that's no good.
and you lose Kenneth Walker. But I mean, still, I mean, they basically just kind of got handcuffed, and it sucks. I mean, not that I condone any of that, garbage. I don't know what happened with Mel Tucker. Besides the point. A funny little tidbit about Michigan State: Antonio Gates Jr. is a redshirt sophomore on Michigan State. He had 11 catches for 82 yards last year. Does he make a jump
Maybe.
like his father maybe once did, even though his father played basketball at Kent State?
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know.
We shall see. Believe in the Gates train.
And then you look at Michigan State's depth of running back. Nate Carter's a senior, 798 yards. Other than that, the next leading rusher only has 300 yards. So it's going to be a pretty thin backfield, I think. But if Aiden Childs is as advertised, and he gets clicking with receivers, I think 13.5 isn't too. I don't think 13.5 is too much for a team that is just so much better in a sense of stability, in a sense of just togetherness. Only because when you look at FAU, there's transfers all over the place. They have a fucking receiver playing running back next year. Like, it doesn't look like there's any sort of wheels in motion over there that, make me want to be like, you know what, do they cover 2 touchdowns? I don't really know if they do.
No. Based solely off of that, I took Michigan State.
Yeah,
Points.
and I also, I do have an under for this one.
Matt, against any Big Ten team, I'm probably taking 13.5 against FAU. So
I think so. Yeah, I do have a total for this. I did take under 45.5.
Under. Okay, that's
Went under, yes, only because I think FAU. There's a very large chance that FAU does not score more than 7 points in this game.
Yeah.
And that means that even if Michigan State scores, let's say they eclipse 40 points.
Yeah, it could still not, but
it's 40-7. You'd just be barely breaking over. And I don't expect Michigan State's offense to gel that quickly. I mean, even as bad as FAU is, I don't expect them to gel and score 40. I mean, I expect Aiden Childs to probably go out there the first two or three drives, probably stall out twice, maybe get a field goal on one of them. I don't expect this to go smoothly at all for Michigan State. So that's why I'm going to take the under, but I still am taking the spread because I think it's just going to be a blowout, but it's going to be like an ugly blowout.
Yeah, I can see that. See where you're going with that.
Yeah,
sounds like we both have Michigan State points.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't go. It's a Big Ten team. I just can't do it.
No.
It wouldn't feel right. No. This next one that we might have, however, I think you might feel differently about.
What? I've got coming up next. I got Elon at Duke.
Elon at Duke. Elon at Duke. Yes.
What is the scouting report for this game? Seems like you got a big old smile on your face over there, and I'm not sure why you're so happy about this one. At Duke.
So you look at Duke. Duke's walking in with first-year head coach Manny Diaz, who was the defensive coordinator at oh shit! I literally was just writing about this. Manny Diaz, Penn State. He was the Penn State defensive coordinator. Left for the head coaching job to go to Duke. His QB is going to be Texas transfer Malik Murphy, who was kind of up and down in Big 12 play. He was put in a pretty big moment considering Texas was so highly ranked at the time and Ewers wasn't, playing at that time. But he's clearly got potential. He's 6'3", 240. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. I mean, it's really depends on whether Manny Diaz, who is a defensive coach, mind you, is going to be able to bring the reins in. Duke does have 3 offensive linemen that are transfers, all from smaller schools coming in. So, I mean, it's going to be a completely new look offensively, I think. And it looks like Duke's leading receiver is going to be Javon Harvey, He's going to be their wide receiver X, and he's a grad transfer from Old Dominion who's only had 70 catches in 3 seasons at Old Dominion. And that's technically their wide receiver 1 on our lads depth chart. That's their X.
I mean,
which is pretty concerning.
I don't know I still don't know where you're going with this. Like,
where I'm going with this.
Do you have Elon points?
So where I'm going with this, let me finish. Let me finish. Duke also lost their leading rusher, Jordan Waters, to North Carolina State. But they do still have redshirt senior Jaquez Moore, who averaged 5.8 yards a carry and had 674 yards. But that was in a tandem with Jordan Waters.
Yep.
So you look at Jaquez Moore. Can Jaquez Moore be this bell cow guy, or are they just going to rotate in with these unproven freshmen and sophomores? And it seems that if there's going to be a team, in my opinion, who's going to make a lapse in judgment, it's going to be Duke. I think 23.5 points is way too many points for a team with a first-year head coach, a first-year QB in a new system, and a wide receiver group that doesn't look much better than Elon's wide receiver group.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just kind of picking at wide receiver groups here. I mean, this goes back to the almost Michigan State game where you get Big Ten opponent. And Malik Murphy's not just like, some quarterback. Kids.
I know Malik Murphy's won games. However, I think FAU's in a lot worse of a spot when it comes to total roster construction.
So
you go to last year. Elon played Wake Forest last year to 20 points.
All right.
And they returned most of that team to this team right here. And I don't think this Duke team is much better than that Wake Forest team last year.
All right, so you have Elon.
Elon plus 23.5.
23.5. All right, I absolutely do not have that. I have Duke points. I think Malik Murphy's gonna fucking annihilate Elon.
I think Malik Murphy's gonna get a little bit of a Joe Milton.
Think so?
Maybe, I don't know. I think maybe people are gonna be like, "Who's this Malik Murphy guy? Whatever happened to him, dude?"
All right.
I think that's what's gonna happen, dude.
All right. We're not agreeing too much. It's probably good. Probably a good thing.
That's probably a good thing, dude.
Probably a good thing. All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah, what do we got? TCU Stanford?
Yeah, you're excited about this one. TCU.
Another one, Stanford. Too. I like this one, too.
TCU giving 9.5. Here we go. Scout report.
TCU came off a pretty disappointing year last year. Week 1 they went in, they played Colorado. Lost to Colorado, and it was like, I think 46-41.
Then Colorado was named national champion after week 1.
Yeah, essentially.
Right there, they're giving the trophy. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely like 12-year-old kids who are on TikTok that have seen that game, and they're like, dude, these guys are so sick. It's not even funny.
Dude,
like Shooter Sanders,
I heard it
number 1 pick in the draft.
People's mouths that like, oh, they might go to the playoff. No way.
Kirk Herbstreit said that after week 1. Yeah, before I get angry. Last year, a pretty up and down season from Josh Hoover, the redshirt freshman. He didn't start that Colorado game. Chandler Morris started that Colorado game through 2 interceptions. So I'm not going to put that on Josh Hoover. But Josh Hoover didn't play all that great. Lost to West Virginia. Just want to throw that out there too. TCU actually has a pretty cool running back room. Trey Sanders, the Alabama transfer, didn't see much action last year. But this year he's going to be a redshirt senior. He's going to probably have a little bit bigger of a role, and he's going to be splitting carries with Cam Cook. Cam Cook's technically listed as a running back 1. But, I mean, Alabama transfer, TCU, you got to give him a little bit of carries at some point. TCU is definitely missing Imani Bailey. Imani Bailey had a really good game against Colorado last year, about 170 rushing yards last year. And he was probably the most electrifying player on TCU's offense for a very long time, at least for 7 or 8 games. Their wide receiver 1 returns, unlike many other people we talked about, 41 receptions, 573 yards. Their wide receiver 2, J.P. Richardson, also returns, 46 receptions, 536 yards. So you have 2 receivers, Savion Williams and J.P. Richardson, that are both coming back, that both have at least 40 catches under their belt. And they're going to be missing Jared Wiley too, they lost Jared Wiley to the NFL. He's currently playing for the Chiefs right now. But TCU is 10th in total defensive production coming back. 21st in total returning offensive production. Whole line's back. Almost the whole defense is back. So it's going to be a pretty good TCU team, I think. But I'm, for some reason, just in love with this Stanford team. When 3-9 last year, they beat Colorado last year.
They did. Huge.
They did
huge
beat Colorado.
Huge
game.
Too.
29-point comeback.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Unbelievable.
What's their return?
Their return, they're 26th.
Really?
At 134. So, I mean, they're returning. They return the QB. Yeah, they return the QB.
Really high number of returns.
They return 2 of their top receivers. So yeah, Stanford was a part of the best football game last year. That Colorado-Stanford game, without a doubt, was a game of the year for some reason. They got a guy who was a true freshman last year who made a name for himself in that game named Alec Ayomanor. I don't know if I pronounced that right at all. Ayomanor.
Could not tell you.
But as a true freshman, had 63 catches for over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, you don't see many red freshmen just go out and do that. I don't care if it was in the Pac-12 or not. He had one of the best catches I have ever seen on top of Travis Hender's head, where he just basically turned him into a little baby and just caught the ball over him. So I think that a 9.5 point, I think a 10-point spread is way too big for a game like this. Where Stanford.
That was the first thing.
Stanford has their QB coming back. Stanford's QB, Ashton Daniels, did not have like an awful year last year. 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Not great, but for a guy that's a sophomore that's about to be a junior with Alec Ayomanor, it's going to be awful. I'm going to get bitched for that. A guy who is as talented as he is as a freshman, getting a year older, a year stronger in the weight room, he might be the best receiver in the country by the end of the season, whether it's him or Luther Burden. I think those are the top 2 receivers in the country. And I think that Stanford gives TCU a big surprise, and I think they might win this game outright just because I think he has a huge game.
Yeah, I mean, and it's in Stanford. I mean,
in Stanford, in the Cardinal.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tree flying around.
Yeah, before I even thought about anything, I saw TCU at Stanford 9.5. And I was like, it's
way too much.
Yeah, it almost feels like a trap bet. Is it a trap bet? It might be a trap bet.
Might be a little bit of a trap bet.
Well, we're both running right into it then if it's a trap bet. All right, let's get into Saturday. Let's get into Saturday, shall we?
Welcome to Saturday. I have been waiting for this day. For about 8 months.
8 months. He's been waiting for UConn at Maryland anxiously.
No. Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
I have not.
Absolutely you have, Dawson.
What I have been waiting for is an overrated Penn State team to go into Morgantown, West Virginia at 12 o'clock noon on Saturday, August 31st. And I have been waiting for them to lose to the old Golden Blue.
Well, good thing we're not talking about them first. First up on the slate.
Oh, God. Who are we talking
Clemson.
about?
No. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to pick UConn.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
We're going in order. Order of ESPN.com. Number 14.
Okay.
Number 14, Clemson. And
14
Klubnik goes into Georgia. Number 1.
Number one,
Georgia
Georgia.
giving 14.5. Let's hear the scouting report.
Georgia's good at two things. They're good at winning football games and letting their players get into reckless driving incidents.
That's what they do.
What they do down
They
there.
drive drunk.
Not sure why it gets done so often. Maybe it's because all of them have, NIL Corvettes now and whatnot, and they want to see how fast they can drive and whatnot. You guys got to look at Henry Ruggs, dude. You see what happened to that guy? Think about that, dude. But let's get back to football here. Georgia's led by two NFL hopefuls, Carson Beck and Trevor Etienne. Whoa! What's going on here, dude?
Whoa!
All right, sorry. Trevor Etienne, infamously, I should say, transferred from the University of Florida. A little SEC rival there, Florida-Georgia line. Brother of Travis Etienne, starting running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Some NFL blood already there. It's pretty apparent to see that Kirby Smart's built a pretty long-standing tradition down there in the hedges.
Oh, yeah.
If only he could just figure out how to tell his players not to drive like stupid idiots.
Maybe he just doesn't care.
It'd be perfect. Maybe he doesn't
All
care.
he
Maybe that's how they win. I don't know.
How they play on the field.
But my question to you, Nick Putt, is at what point do we look at Kirby Smart and do we say he might look like that guy that was in Tuscaloosa for a good while there that might not be there anymore?
I don't know.
Does he win like one or two more, and do you give him that?
Yeah, I think we're going what?
Is he on the fast track to start him now?
Bama hovered around number one in the country for 10+ years. I think that's really what it takes. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, but I'm saying if he gets one or two more under his belt and keeps his perennial number one for, let's say, 4 years.
Yeah, sure. Or
sure.
Same conversation. Sure, why not?
And the beauty about Georgia football is similar to what a Saban-led Alabama team would do, is that obviously players leave. If you're a good football program, you're going to put people in the draft. And Georgia did that. 8 Georgia players got drafted this past year, 8 of their starters. And you want to know what Kirby Smart's going to do? He's just going to get rid of people, and he's going to replace them with people that are just as good. Dude, we got to figure something out about this, dude. I'll tell you that.
You got to figure it out.
I'll tell you that for free.
It was fine while we were fucking...
Dude, it's because I'm charging my phone now, dude.
What's going on?
One thing that does kind of pop out at me is that out of the 8 Georgia players that got drafted, 3 of them were in the defensive backfield. Kamari Lassiter, Tyke Smith, 2 safeties, both got drafted in the first 3 rounds, and Javon Bullard, one of their corners, got drafted. Offensively, Brock Bowers, obviously, best tight end prospect we've seen since
Heath Miller.
Literally Heath Miller, since Mark Bavaro. My dad would tell you that Mark Bavaro is the best tight end ever, but we're not going to get into that conversation either. Lad McConkey, who was sneaky athletic, bring to your daughter, gym rat, route runner, Hunter Renfro-esque player. And they also let go of Marius Mel.
For that comparison.
No, there's not at all. No reason at all. And they also lost tackle Amarius Mims, just another Georgia tackle that wants to go in the first round and just play well, Yep. But, what they're going to do is just next man up. They're just going to replace those guys with, these other high 4 and 5 stars and whatnot. That's what they're going to do. With missing Lad McConkey and with missing Brock Bowers, are going to have to look at other people to throw the ball to. Dylan Bell is probably going to be wide receiver 1, I think. He's going to get a much larger role this year. He was wide receiver 3, technically, when it comes to, Bowers and McConkey, and he still carved out a pretty nice role for himself last year. But he's going to have to make that jump to wide receiver 1. They also picked up Dominic Levet, transfer from Mizzou, who probably was just didn't want to be in the shadow of Luther Burden for another year because Luther Burden's just getting all the targets in Missouri right now. I mean, rightfully so, because he's very good. Yeah, the only thing I really got to worry about with Georgia is just that they're inexperienced in the defensive backfield. It's going to be a lot of freshmen and sophomores making jumps that you don't really want to make jumps to in the SEC when it comes to all these skill players. I mean, every team has very skilled skill players. But yeah, moving on to Clemson. I mean, Cade Klubnik, for some reason, is just an NCAA 25 fucking legend. He wins the Heisman every single year. Not sure why EA is, all on it like that.
We'll see. I mean, he had a lot of hype.
He had a whole lot of hype and a whole lot of haters last year.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really.
Whole lot of haters last year.
I mean, this is definitely a show me year, but
certainly a show me year. Absolutely.
I was leaning towards Clemson a bit here, but I don't know if we could do that.
But the good thing about Clemson is that they're returning 9 of their 11 starters. They returned their senior running back, Phil Maffa, who had 965 yards last year, and that was splitting carries with Will Shipley, who got drafted. And people thought that Will Shipley was, the kind of the wide or the running back one in that room, but it really was not when you look at the volume of carries and the volume of just total yards that Phil Maffa created. Over 6 yards a carry last year, 171 carries. Clemson also has a tight end, Jake Brenningstoll, who had 50 receptions last year. 50 receptions from a tight end in college football is kind of utterly insane.
Yeah, it's nuts.
When you think about it, I mean, you don't really see, especially in a lot of these offenses that are a lot more simplified and a lot more kind of just dumbed down for college players to play. You don't see a lot of, tight ends being used in offenses in premier levels. No. Only really checkdowns maybe, or strictly as blocking tight ends. But Clemson's in the situation where they run a pro-style, kind of offense, and they've had to because of the amount of pro-style QBs they've had. And Cade Klubnik's following up, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson. I mean, even Taj Boyd, but like a lot of successful Clemson QBs that have done very well.
Oh, yeah.
And he hasn't necessarily shown it yet.
No.
So that's why I took UGA minus 13.5 because it's the dogs.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's gonna run over you, dude. I
think the game will be played relatively close to the spread.
I think it'll be closer than what the score intends, but I think that Georgia still wins by 2 touchdowns.
Oh yeah. I don't know if too many people are gonna shy away from that one. So I mean, who knows? Maybe Klubnik walks in there and has himself a day
against the best defense. I mean, it's an inexperienced DB group.
Who knows? Klubnik's got some games under his belt now, so who knows?
He does. It's all about that jump. All right, what's next?
It's all about that. Coming up next, we got This one he's gonna talk about this one for an hour. We got number 9 Penn State going into Morgantown.
Number 8 Penn State.
Number 8, number 9, number 8.
Number 8 Penn State.
They're going into Morgantown, playing the Mountaineers. Bring back
whatever it is.
Football.
It's gonna be what it is afterwards.
Dawson, just get the scouting report.
Oh, here we are, gentlemen. This is probably the biggest game that West Virginia's had in West Virginia since, I'd like to say, number 5 TCU. Trevon Boykin went in there that 2014 year where they got snubbed out of the playoff. Other than that, I mean, I'm thinking Miami in the 80s when Hostetler beat them. I'm thinking Penn State in 85 when they beat them when they were number 3. But this is a very, very huge, monumental game for the West Virginia football program, for Neil Brown, and for the whole state of West Virginia as a whole. I'll tell you what, Morgantown is going to be rocking on Saturday. Pat McAfee's going on Friday, doing his Pat McAfee show at the Life Sciences building at 10 a.m. on Friday. That's going to be
That's
insane.
where the old stadium was, right? Right.
Yeah, so the old
Yeah.
stadium used to be in between old Mountaineer Field. They tore that down and then built Milan Puskar. But yeah, touchdown city. Yeah, I mean, like old Sunnyside used to be up all right there. He used to go to a bar called Mutt's. They used to be right there. They got torn down. Um, I'm fucking excited. I have not been more excited for a West Virginia football game in a very, very, very long time. Other than I think when Oklahoma came in with Baker in 2016, and that had playoff implications, but West Virginia, as they do, laid a goose egg. But let's get to the football side of things. West Virginia is the only team in the FBS to return 3 700-yard rushers: Garrett Green, Jaheim White, and C.J. Donaldson. And if there's any way to beat Penn State, it is running the football. Penn State's defense, coming off of a year where they only gave up 13.5 points a game last year, third nationally, honestly scared the shit out of me until I realized, you want to know who their defensive coordinator was? Manny Diaz.
Uh-oh.
Manny Diaz is gone. I don't know who the new guy is. Different defense they have. It's still a very stingy, very good defense. But you look to last year and you look at how they lost those 2 games last year against Ohio State and Michigan. Obviously 2 very good programs, but hear me out. In the Michigan game, Michigan ran the ball to end the game 33 straight times in a row over 3 series. And they completely just took the entire game out of the equation. They ran down 7.5 minutes of time, basically, over 3 series and 33 plays, and won by 8 points in a game where they didn't have their head coach, Sharon Moore. That was his first head coaching job, Sharon Moore.
Yep.
Harbaugh wasn't there. Sharon Moore kind of gets vaulted into this, he can't really focus on the offense. He's focused about the team now, where he can't really run his offense as well as he does. So he says, you know what? I'm just going to run the fuck out of the ball. Easy to say when you have the best offensive line in football and you have the best running back group in football at the time. But it gives you a formula for them to succeed. And the thing with Penn State is that this is also a make-or-break year for Drew Allard and James Franklin. Yeah. Drew Allard was considered this consensus prodigy when it comes to quarterback recruits, and he hasn't really given you what you've wanted as a Penn State. If I was a Penn State fan and I keep having these 10-2 years without beating Ohio State, Michigan, James Franklin is 1-14 all time against Penn State or Michigan. Yeah. He's like 38-5 against everybody else, but can't beat Penn State and Michigan. And I know that doesn't have to do anything with West Virginia, but what I'm saying is that people are sick of waiting around to be great at College Park. Yep. People are sick of it. And this year out of any, when it comes to playoff implications, this is the best year out of any for Penn State to make it, because Penn State doesn't need to beat Ohio State or Michigan. So in the back of their minds, they're like, all right, all I need to do is just go into Morgantown and I need to take care of business, and then I can lose these 2 games and I'm good. What if they don't? Then they're 9-3 with a loss to West Virginia. They don't make the playoff. Is James Franklin gone?
Probably.
Is Drew Allard, who's in a make-or-break year for his NFL candidacy, does he go from maybe a second round or a first round pick to 5th or 6th round and undrafted because they lose in Morgantown?
I think that's got, that's a whole season kind of thing. But
I know it's a whole season kind of thing, but when you talk about the fans of Notre Dame who are sick and tired of, not playing in important football games, and then you lose the first game of the year to an unranked West Virginia team, albeit I think West Virginia is a lot better than what the Associated Press is saying about them. I think that people are going to ask for James Franklin's head if they don't win this game.
All right.
That's what I think.
That's what he thinks.
And the thing is with Penn State is that Penn State on the offensive side of the ball, this is probably Drew Aller's best offense that he's had. Ohio State transfer Julian Fleming's going to be his wide receiver 1 out of Ohio State, who is also a pretty highly touted prospect that hasn't been able to do what he was supposed to do at Ohio State. But you look at Ohio State receivers, there was, it's basically wide receiver you ran now. Marvin Igluke is a wide receiver 1 now. So, I mean, there's not a lot of room for him, so I get the move. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen as your probably, I would say, the best running back tandem in the country. I would say West Virginia's running back tandem of C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White's the most underrated, not the best, but the most underrated. And guess who Penn State hired as their defensive coordinator?
Dick LeBeau. I've got no idea.
Dick LeBeau. Tom Allen from Indiana.
Oh, okay.
So Tom Allen's his first year being the defensive coordinator. Does this defense play up to par? We'll see. I think West Virginia runs the ball down their throat. I think they cover 8. I'm not going to say that they win because if I say that they win, they're just not going to. But I will say that they absolutely cover 8 points.
I think they're absolutely covering 8 points.
Absolutely covering 8 points. There's not even a doubt in my mind.
So here's my thing. All right.
What do you have to say?
I think it's got to be a really close game, really closely fought game, probably up to like third quarter. I see it maybe being like a 35-28 game. PSU up. I think in the fourth quarter, one way or another. 8.5 is just not enough. It's just like maybe if we had a 10.5, definitely if we had a 13.5. We're going PSU. PSU minus 8.5. PSU.
You're even taking the half a point. It's 8, dude.
8. I'll take them for 8.5.
Dude.
I'll take them for 8.5. Whenever I think of West Virginia football, I just think of them going into Rensselaer Field, Geno Smith.
I don't want to, dude.
Anyways.
Dude, I can't wait for UConn to join the Big 12 in 2031. That's going to be a fun time. One more thing about West Virginia. One thing that I didn't say before. I think Garrett Green is going to make a huge jump from his junior year to his senior year. It was said in camp. The West Virginia QB coach Tyler Allen said that his completion percentage compared to last camp to this camp has jumped up double digits. I think he's going to be a lot more accurate at football thrower this year. He was number 1 last year in air yards per attempt. Which, I mean, he wasn't afraid to fucking throw the ball.
No.
It's just that it doesn't help when, your leading receiver is a walk-on freshman from not Morgantown, West Virginia, but from some town in West Virginia, and he's this 5'11" kid named Hudson Clement.
Yeah, he's essentially me.
He didn't earn a scholarship until week 2 against Duquesne when he had 3 reception touchdowns. But you look at this wide receiver room, it's a year older. There's a lot of guys who were kind of gadget guys. You look at Rodney Gallagher. Rodney Gallagher only had the ball in his hands about 10 or 15 times last year, but every time he had the ball in his hands, he made an impact. He's going to be tried out in the slot this year at slot corner, too. That's going to be exciting. Another two-way player that I want to look out. But, yeah, I mean, this really comes down to how loud it is at Milan Puskar Stadium on Saturday at noon. If I know how that parking lot's going to be, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for Drew Aller, and I hope that I just hope that West Virginia finally figures it out. I mean, if there is a time to turn around a program that has been in limbo for the last 6 years, like West Virginia has been it's August 31st at noon. I mean, that's what it is.
All right.
That's what I got.
PSU minus 8.5. All right, moving on to your real big noon kickoff.
The real fucking important game.
The Nick Evers era begins here in Connecticut. They go to Maryland. where
Oh
they
dear.
get absolutely
College Park.
disrespected. They get absolutely disrespected with a 20 and
20
a
and a
half
half
point
points, huh?
spread
3
in the
touchdowns?
Nick Evers era. Even though he's only thrown one pass in college football and it is an incompletion at Oklahoma 2 years ago, I do not care. Welcome to the Nick Evers era. Dawson, give me a scouting report.
Scouting report. It's going to be a lot of new faces for UConn this year. Like you said, Nick Evers, 4-star at Oklahoma. He's expected to start. But what's most interesting about this offense is actually the backfield. The running back tandem of Cam Edwards and Victor Rosa.
Might
Victor
as
Rosa
well
kind
be
of has
Blake
a
Corum and fucking
might as well be Blake Corum doing it. Donovan Edwards.
Cam Edwards. There you go.
Me and obviously Putt being a huge UConn fan, growing up his whole life.
What are you talking about?
Me and Putt decided to take it upon ourselves when NCAA downloaded to do a UConn dynasty. And
this didn't need to get brought up.
when I say that Victor Rosa was at the forefront of that dynasty,
he was. Of course, he was.
He might be the most underrated football player in NCAA 25 right now at the moment. And I feel like people just have no idea who he is because he plays for the University of Connecticut.
And in the game in depth chart, he's second.
He is
so even if
he
you
doesn't
stumble
even
upon
start,
UConn and plays him,
Cam Edwards is technically the wide receiver 1, or not wide receiver 1, running back 1. Going to wide receiver 1 though, TJ Sheffield leads a pretty inexperienced group, but he's going to be a junior. He's really the only one that's seen major gameplay this year. On the defensive side of the ball, they lost their heart and soul to defense in Jackson Merrill. Jackson Merrill was a gamer. He was on the Panthers roster the last time we checked. Not sure if he made the cut
Mitchell,
day.
But all right.
Did I not say Jackson Mitchell? What did I say?
Merrill.
Oh, Jackson Merrill. Somebody say, who's Jackson Merrill? Jackson Mitchell. He played in the East-West Shrine game, actually. He had a really good game in the East-West Shrine game. I thought he was great. He was the most athletic player, I think, on UConn for the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Easily one of the most impressive defensive players.
Yeah,
seen
impressive,
UConn in quite a long time.
Yeah. They also have to replace, NFL guard Christian Haynes, too. That's going to be a challenge. It's, when you're a program like UConn and you have to replace an NFL talent like that, it's not going to be easy at all. I don't expect them to find an answer. And, the vibe that I get with this UConn team right now is circa 2 years ago when they made what bowl was it against Marshall?
Oh, God.
2 years ago? Was it the Hawaii Bowl?
Longer than 2 years ago, dude. They haven't been to a bowl game since like.
They went to the bowl game 2 years ago. Remember?
What am I talking about? Yeah, the 2.
Dude, come on, dude. You fucking UConn fan, dude.
Yeah, jeez. That's right. I forget the name of the bowl game.
Whatever stupid bowl it was, they played Marshall. They lost, but they made a bowl game for the first time since about 2014, I think.
Yeah, 20.
And they played they played in the St. Peter's Bowl in 2014. But after that, I forget what the other one was. It was against Marshall. That's all I know. The vibe that I get from this team is very similar to that 2022 team, where you kind of didn't have your questions answered at quarterback, where you were kind of going through Zion Turner and you were going through.
Well, the thing is at the beginning of that year is they had fucking Roberson, Taquan Roberson.
Yeah, you had Roberson and you had Zion Turner vying for that QB1 spot. Yeah. And if Evers, hopefully it's not the same thing last year when you had like Joey Fagnano and
last year,
Zion.
Last year was Roberson came back.
Well, yeah, it was Roberson and Fagnano splitting plays though.
After, Fagnano got hurt.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think this team's talented enough on the offensive side of the ball to maybe make a bowl game. But at the same time, it's too early to tell, I think, with like teams like this at least. Maryland's coming off, losing the Big Ten leading passer of all time.
Yeah.
Talia Tagovailoa to his brother. They're
Love
replacing him with Wake Forest transfer Billy Edwards, who has 126 career passing yards at Maryland because he transferred the year before. Their receiver group's led by Caden Prather, who is a former West Virginia player. He's found a pretty good role for himself. He's had 40 catches the last 2 years for over 500 yards. He'll be a redshirt senior, so he'll be kind of the forefront of their passing attack. They have 3 transfer offensive linemen, highlighted by a Georgia transfer, Aliu Ba, who's a redshirt sophomore, so they get 2 years out of him. That's pretty cool. Just to, kind of sum this up, I'm taking Maryland minus 20.5, only because of the questions. Only because of the questions that UConn has at QB.
There's no question at quarterback, Dawson. Let me tell
There
you,
are
the man is
questions.
Nick Evers, and he's
The man's Nick
everybody at
Evers.
camp is
Throwing one
talking
pass.
glowing. Everyone at a camp is talking glowingly about Nick Evers
Throwing
and
one
how
pass.
when there's nothing there, he makes something happen. He's a Texas kid. He's been in some. He went from Oklahoma, Wisconsin.
He's a Texas kid. Exactly. He's a Texas kid that went to Oklahoma. So how do you know that he's the real deal?
All right. Listen, the scene at quarterback at Texas right now is a loaded one. I don't know if that was the spot for him. Not that wasn't loaded at Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But that just
listen.
You're going into Maryland.
Evers,
you're going into College Park, Maryland.
I think Nick Evers has the potential.
Does UConn's football program even have like a jet big enough to bring the whole team to Maryland?
You know how much NIL money we got now?
I guess that's what happens when you're a basketball school.
That's what happens when you have the greatest college basketball team of all time.
Yeah,
that's what happens. You got guys like Nick Evers
blood,
coming to play
blood. What do you want to say?
Nick Evers might just be the greatest UConn quarterback of all time. We'll see.
Hey, we'll see.
We'll see. Since a man named Orlowski came through and played quarterback, it might be Nick Evers' time.
No, he might have ran out of the end zone though. All right, what's next, dude? Miami, Florida?
Yeah, before you so disrespectfully made a fucking comment. All right, up next is Cam Ward, number 19, Miami.
Cam Ward.
Going into Florida, week 1. Big matchup. Minus 2.5, Miami. On the road.
This Miami, on the road. How on the road is it?
Enough that...
Dude, Ethan keeps blowing me up, dude. Trying to record here, dude.
Yeah, Ethan, dude. Finish this on Tuesday. Get out of here, dude.
I mean, there's not going to be many Miami fans at UF. I mean, Miami fans don't even transfer to their own stadium. So, this Miami team's, got a new look to it. Mario Cristobal finally has maybe the offense that he's been looking for. Cam Ward, who's honestly, when you talk about like the transfer portal, Cam Ward's got to be a diamond ranking when it comes to transfer portal players. Played 2 years in Incarnate Word, did very well there. Transferred to Washington State, had 3,500 yards there, and now is transferring for a third time to Miami, where he lives in South Florida. Damian Martinez, Oregon State running back, who had 1,100 yards last year, who basically carried that Oregon State team because, we look at how DJ Ukulele did in his first start at Oregon State, at Florida State, didn't go too well. And their offense was fairly pedestrian for, a ranked team in the Pac-12 all year last year. So that makes me lead to believe that Damian Martinez was actually, honestly, the heart and soul of that offense last year. And I think that how bad that Oregon State does this year is going to be a perfect example of that. And again, we were talking about make or break years for James Franklin. This is a make or break year for both coaches here. For Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier, they both have under 500 records at these respective Florida programs. 2 Florida programs that, when you think of college football, you think of these 2 programs because of how dominant they were both, during their respective eras. When you talk about that 4-year stretch of Miami when it's like 99 to 02, when you had the 20-plus NFL players on that infamous roster, or you talk about the 06 to 08 Florida Gators team led by Urban Meyer with, as many convicts as they had championships, but besides the point, it doesn't really matter. These two programs are, expecting of winning big games like this. And I think they're sick of, going 7-5 or 5-7 or, not being at the forefront of the national spotlight. Florida this year, I think the way this game's going to go, Graham Mertz is still their starting quarterback. I really am not a big Graham Mertz fan. I think that he did a fucking awful job at Wisconsin. Yeah. I think that people thought that he was going to transfer to Florida and be this world beater now that he's out of Wisconsin. They thought that Wisconsin was the problem. Why isn't Graham Mertz the problem? Because he played some pretty pedestrian football last year, in my opinion. I think that Florida fans are going to be chanting for DJ Lagway by halftime in this game. Cristobal said that.
Blowout.
Cristobal said
in
the swamp. Cristobal said that he was going to consider playing DJ Lagway a couple snaps this game. I think that it's not even going to get to halftime until he's going to have to put him in for the whole second half. I think if you want a player to kind of turn around a program in the fashion that maybe Tim Tebow did when he was there, not that he turned around, but he kind of brought it to the forefront of the spotlight.
Yeah.
I think a guy like DJ Lagway does that for you. I don't think Graham Mertz does. There's a reason why Florida's over-under for games this year, albeit their record is just ridiculous. They play 8 of the top 25 teams preseason so far, but it's 4.5 games.
Yeah.
And Graham Mertz's QB play last year was kind of indicative of why that is. You know what I mean? So that being said, I took Miami minus 2.5. I think it's way too close of a line. I think that, again, both these teams are kind of, they're replacing a little bit. Miami's starting fresh from a chance. From if you were to look at it that way, they're kind of starting fresh when it comes to their offense. But I mean,
yeah, I think the only reason this game's 2.5 is because
it's in the swamp.
In the swamp.
I mean, so you buy, the transitive property, you give them 3 because it was in the swamp. There's still -3 because this line's probably going to move to -3 by tomorrow when you think about it.
We'll see.
So basically, it's technically a 6-point spread when you think about it, that way. In my opinion.
Yep. All right, so you got Miami.
Yeah, Miami. I mean, Cam Ward's too good to, lose. Unless DJ Lagway has a fucking legacy second half. I don't see it happening. I'm just not a fan of Graham Mertz.
Dude.
I'm just not a big fan of Graham Mertz.
Already come to the conclusion that he's getting pulled by halftime.
By halftime, dude, he's done. Done for.
All right, sure. All right, let's move on. We're fucking running long.
Done for.
Colorado State at Texas.
Colorado State, Texas, just Texas.
Just Texas. Yeah, Texas.
Texas. Isaiah Bond's gonna have 700 receiving yards.
Fans,
if
Texas
yards.
doesn't cover the spread, they're gonna be trading Arch Manning by halftime. There's your scouting report. All right, up next, Ohio at Syracuse. Syracuse -7.
Ohio, Syracuse. What's the spread? 17.5.
17.5. Big Kyle McCord year.
Huge Kyle McCord year. What's the name of? I forget what the name of Syracuse head coach is. Georgia guy.
Beats me.
Georgia guy.
Beating me.
Brought a lot of SEC level talent to Syracuse. Kind of reminiscent of maybe the Donovan McNabb days, early on. I think Kyle McCord got a really bad rap at Ohio State. Yeah. I don't think when you look at what they did to replace Kyle McCord, they went in and got Will Howard, who, in my opinion, I don't think he was winning the Kansas State job next year when it comes to him and Avery Johnson after how well Avery Johnson played in that bowl game. There was a chance he wasn't starting at Kansas State.
Yeah.
There was honestly a legitimate chance that he wasn't going to start at Kansas State. So you run away from Kansas State. You run away from a Big 12, a 4-star Big 12 freshman, and you jump to fucking Ohio State, which has the biggest implications of any Power 5 program in the country right now. He is loaded around with talent. They got Quinshon Judkins. They have Trevion Henderson. They have Emeka Ibuka. He's loaded with talent. I mean, their entire team is worth about $20 million in NIL at the end of the day. I mean, big Ohio State boosters have said, you know what, I'm fucking sick of this shit. We are winning a national championship, and probably gave Will Howard over $1 million to come basically do exactly what Kyle McCord did, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to be that world beater QB that makes a difference. I mean, maybe he gets lucky against Michigan this year just because of how, they weren't necessarily able to replace, J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum, even though, I think Donovan Edwards is going to have a great year, but they don't have the question of QB answered yet. But I think they will by week 9 or week 10 when they play Ohio State. And I just don't think that Will Howard was ever considered to be that, good. Even among, Big 12 fans. I never was really thinking like, oh, Will Howard's the one I need to be looking out for.
The only reason he's getting hype right now is obviously Ohio State.
Yeah. That being said, Kyle McCord, I think, is pretty damn good still.
We got way off the beaten path.
I think we did. I think that Kyle McCord is going to go into the ACC, into this Syracuse team, who honestly has a pretty good foundation right now. I think he's going to go in there. I think he's going to throw for over 3,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and I think Syracuse may be a perennial, maybe a borderline playoff team, in my opinion.
Wow.
You look at their schedule. It's very, very easy. There's maybe 2 or 3 games that maybe 3 or 4 games that they actually have a shot at losing.
Okay.
In my opinion, that could be a topic for later. Maybe we'll do conference breakdowns, but that's at another time.
Maybe. All right. You have Syracuse. I've got
Syracuse minus 17.5. Yep.
Yeah. Up next, Boise State goes to Georgia Southern, giving 13 points. 13 points on the road.
I'm not even going to talk about Georgia Southern, even though I probably should, considering that the spread is only 13 points.
Yeah.
But I think that
let's hear about these
Boise State. I think that Boise State is getting criminally underrated.
Yeah.
Right now, and I think it's because Malachi Nelson's not starting. Because I think everybody was expecting to, and I think that their coaching staff said, you know what, Malachi Nelson has only been in this program for less than a year. He doesn't understand the offense. Maddox Madsen, who started about 6 or 7 games last year, he's already got over a year in the system. They're playing Georgia Southern away. They have one of the best running backs in the entire country in Ashton Jeanty. ESPN released the top 100 players list, and Ashton Jeanty was 27. He was the highest group of 5 player in the entire list. He had 1,350 rushing yards last year, 500 receiving yards. He was Boise State's second leading receiver as a junior. He's got potential All-American written all over him. Boise State returns, I think, 4 or 5 offensive linemen. So it's going to be the same guys he was running behind, essentially. The only thing that sucks about Boise State is that their leading receiver, Eric McAllister, transferred to TCU, had 47 receptions, 873 yards, and 5 touchdowns last year. So the receiving core, like many other people that play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, very inexperienced group, and that's what a lot of these week 1 games are going to be. Is there's so many people transferring to so many different schools nowadays that it's going to be hard to gel. It's going to be hard for these guys to gain chemistry by week 1 even. I mean, some of these guys have only been in camp with each other for a couple of months.
Right.
And it's going to be tough for Maddox Madsen to be thrown to these guys when he was just named the starter only a couple weeks ago. But that being said, I think Ashton Genty is so good, and you can rely on this offensive line. You can rely on Ashton Genty to just do whatever he wants, basically, against the Georgia Southern team that's really not that good. Maybe this is a trap, and maybe I didn't do my research on Georgia Southern, but I feel like 13 is way too easy for Boise State. I'm going to take it.
There was too much talent there. Way too much
I
talent.
mean, you're looking at, probably the strongest group of 5 team to probably make the playoff, I'd say.
Probably, yeah.
Boise State's probably number 1.
Yeah, there you go.
App State maybe, but I feel like if there's going to be a game that I'm wrong about, it's this one, but I'm taking Boise State.
All right. Yeah, no, I think you're probably wrong in more than one game, but it's all right. Moving on.
Yeah, we'll see, dude.
UNLV at Houston. Houston giving 2.5 points.
So Houston just fired Dana Holgerson. Good riddance. I hated Dana Holgerson. Not actually. I thought Dana Holgerson was pretty cool. I thought he had some testicles when he went for 2 against Texas with Will Greer. That was probably the best game I've watched in a very long time from West Virginia. It's honestly kind of sad, but Houston's just, kind of trying to find their footing in the Big 12 a little bit now. They went for 4-8 last year. They beat West Virginia last year on a Hail Mary. I think that they just squeak by. Was it 2.5?
Yeah, 2.5.
Yeah, it's just the group of 5 versus Power 5.
UNLV.
It's really all it is.
Like UNLV's always, I was like, all right, little UNLV, and then in a matchup like this, I feel like it's just such a trap. So Houston's
QB is also returning Dante Harris. He had a pretty good game against West Virginia. He's pretty decent. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like Derek King a little bit. Remember Derek King?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. All right. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this last game. Notre Dame, number 7, going to Kyle Field.
So this one, what's interesting about this game is that you got a lot of
getting the points.
A lot of crosses are going on here. So Mike Elko Mike Elko took the job at A&M, former Duke head coach. He is facing his former stud quarterback, Riley Leonard, who in his offense did very well until he played Notre Dame and broke his ankle against Notre Dame.
Yep.
And then eventually transferred to Notre Dame. Very weird, very weird, but besides the point. This game's going to be rocking, too. I think this is the second most expensive ticket in all of college football behind, I think, West Virginia. Like, West Virginia, Penn State was the most expensive ticket in college football. Notre Dame A&M was second, I think, so 7 versus 20 matchup, huge game. Marcus Freeman's kind of looking for that signature win to, I think, catapult his Notre Dame coaching position. And I think a win at A&M would be huge.
That'd be very big.
I don't think that Connor Wegman, the quarterback of A&M, does nearly as well as Leonard did with Elko at Duke. I think he doesn't have the tools that Leonard had. I don't think he has the mobility. I don't think he has the arm strength. So I don't see him making that jump in order to make Texas A&M compete. When I think about Texas A&M QBs, which it's not going to be the same with Elko, I think about like Kellen Mond and like Jimbo Fisher and like just not real quarterbacks. Right. Which is going to be different now that Elko's there, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a weird period because Wegman's still kind of used to the Jimbo way of things, and now he's getting a whole new offense thrown at him. Hold this. I take the experience with Riley Leonard. I take Notre Dame -3. Oh, wait. Notre Dame +3, I mean.
I say A&M's giving the points. I got Notre Dame
Yeah,
plus 3
James
too.
plus 3. That's what I meant.
think
That's what I
I
meant.
think if I had a gun to my head and someone said Heisman Trophy winner go, probably be Riley Leonard.
Probably, yeah.
Very high on Riley Leonard. I feel like the pool for Heisman is very shallow. I mean, everybody loves Dylan Gabriel for that this year, but I really don't see that path. I
I
mean,
think
maybe
Dylan Gabriel is a scared little man.
maybe Gabriel is just like too good, like numbers wise. But
Dylan Gabriel is a scared little man.
yeah, I'm not huge on Gabriel, and
Scared little man. As soon as he saw Oklahoma jump to the SEC, he was like, you know what? I don't want to do that.
yeah, exactly. So
I mean, he also maybe probably saw what Bo Nix did, throwing the ball less than 5 yards down the field and getting drafted in the first round. But
oh yeah,
and just
that
remember, if you
Oregon
can throw
offense is
screens,
huge. But
if you can throw screens for Oregon, you can get drafted in the first round.
yeah,
And that's what they're saying.
yeah. So we both have Notre Dame points.
Yeah, hell yeah. At
That's
least we can agree on something, huh?
yeah. We agreed on a good bit. I think like half of them, to be honest. I feel like
I think we did. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
Is that it, dude? Is that
that's
all we
it.
got?
That's it. That was very long, dude. That is certainly not
I told
it.
you it was gonna be long,
I know.
dude.
It's all right. It's all right. That's
That's
it.
that's it.
If there is a single person that watched that whole thing, good for you, man.
I'd
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I would really appreciate
Like
it through all the
I
stuttering
think
and
that's gonna
whatnot.
be like an hour and a half. Hey, whoever did got some pretty damn. Whoever watched this video knows more about college football than they did 2 hours
You know,
ago.
I would agree. And you
So
know what? I started off that video like tripping over my own fucking tongue,
yeah.
but I felt like I got into a groove there at the
Yeah,
end,
that
and I
was like
feel like
this is like our
we're
preseason.
gonna build off it,
It's
dude.
like
It's
our
gonna be fine.
preseason. Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna build
that's
off
it.
it, dude. You know what? That's it though.
All
That was
right.
fun.
Yeah. Smell you later.
Go Mounties.
Fuck the Mounties.